Okay, hey, what a delight to have with us during this segment Jordan Sekulow. He is the Executive Director of American Center for Law and Justice. He and his father, you probably see him all over television, you hear him all over radio. These guys are on the cutting edge of what's happening, and their organization is doing an incredible job tracking some of the big issues and staying on top of it. Jordan, what a delight to have you, friend. How you doing there in the big town today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me again, Perry.
Hey, you bet. Hey, listen, for those who just need a little bit of an update, tell us all the things that ACLJ is doing.
Sure. The American Center for Law and Justice, we focus on, in the United States, constitutional law. Internationally, we have offices around the world that work on issues like basic religious freedom, for instance, in Europe, things that we work on here in the United States, but also Christian persecution. We have an office in Pakistan. We are heavily involved in the situation with Pastor Youssef Nadarkhani, who's now been in jail 975 days because of his Christian faith. So in the United States, we're waiting on a couple of big Supreme Court rulings here in Washington, D.C., one on health care, one on the Arizona immigration law, and, of course, a lot happening in the courts, a lot happening around the country. All
right. I want to come to a couple of those in just a moment. But first of all, I want to focus our attention on your latest drive to protest New York City schools' unconstitutional ban on God Bless America. Can you imagine that this is happening? Some of this stuff is beyond our ability to process at times.
Yeah, and it becomes very difficult. For instance, Perry, just before coming on with you, the principal has kind of caved, but not fully. Now, there's been an outcry from the entire country on this, and especially from the students here. And this presents a very unique situation. You know, we're used to kind of these people on the left, the kind of the atheist world who don't want songs with God in it. Here we have a principal who's actually a Jehovah's Witness who doesn't want anything about being proud to be an American in it. And so her compromise has now been today announced that they can sing America the Beautiful, but not God Bless the USA. Now, the school has always done God Bless the USA. They're two very different songs. They're both great songs. But you can see here now the parsing of, you know, we believe in religious freedom at the ACLJ. We fight for this all the time. Right. And the principal absolutely has a right to, if she decides what Jehovah's Witness is known for, not pledging allegiance to the flag. That is completely within her religious freedom rights, her First Amendment rights in the United States. But when you start imposing that on everyone else, that's where the problem begins.
All right. Is the mayor going to get involved in this one?
The mayor has gotten involved so far. You know, the craziest thing about this one, Perry, is it started off with they're getting rid of God Bless the USA, and that's still where the school district stands. And I really don't think that's the right thing to do. That's what the kids were practicing and learning what to sing. And it's a song that I think for, you know, America the Beautiful is a great song, but God Bless the USA in our modern times really does resonate with a lot of the New Yorkers. A lot of these kids' parents are immigrants in, and they love this song. It's why they brought their kids to America. Mayor Bloomberg got involved because the principal's first reaction was Justin Bieber's Baby was fine for the 5 and 6-year-olds in the kindergarten class, but that God Bless the USA was just not age appropriate. So Bloomberg got involved and said, okay, no, we should not be doing the Bieber thing. But he didn't say, but sing God Bless the USA. So it's typical in New York and what we've seen in the school districts there and school districts across the country. If you start raising your voice, you start, you know, and this is because of parents, other teachers at the school, and the students as well, you can see things changing. And you already see now it's classic in every kind of official like this, including this principal, they try to start compromising with you and coming up with an idea. If no one talked about this issue, if no one cared, then there wouldn't be America the Beautiful. There certainly wouldn't be God Bless the USA. And the graduation is not until the 20th. So we'll see what changes there, and we'll keep everybody updated at aclj.org.
Well, thank you. And thank you for ACLJ jumping on top of that and staying on it and keeping the pressure on. Again, aclj.org. Let's go back over to some of the cases that you guys are tracking. As you know, the Supreme Court now has heard the Obamacare case. How do you feel about that? What's your take?
You know, every day that it gets closer to the decision, you kind of do a second guess. You say, you know, was I hearing it the right way? Am I analyzing it the right way? We represented 119 members of Congress in that case, so it's very important to us, and I think for the whole country. You know, we're going into a general election, and people want to know where the healthcare law stands, because we could talk about reforms, we could talk about other ideas, but we need to first find out, is the court going to get rid of this, or is it going to be left to the Congress and maybe a new president? if we want to do something different with this law.
Right.
I really do believe I would be surprised, Perry, if and almost shocked, but based on the oral arguments and the judicial philosophy of the justices on the court, if there were no changes to the law whatsoever. So I think the question is, how far does it go? Does the court say the whole law is unconstitutional and that's it? Yeah. Does the court say the mandate's unconstitutional? Now Congress, you go figure out what can still be done under this law without the mandate and what can't be done. Certainly the most controversial provisions would not be able to stand. Obviously, if the mandate went, so would basically the penalty that comes along with the mandate. And that's the entire economic structure. There are parts of the law people like, and what we saw this week was that a few insurance companies are actually going to adopt those parts of the law anyways. And it kind of reminds me of that's why we want the private sector to come up with these solutions. If they think it's a good idea and it's going to make them more competitive, they'll do it on their own. So I think we're going to know by the end of June at the latest. We could find out as early as next week. And I know the American people, I know all of our supporters are really anxious about this one. But, it's one of those I would be surprised if it's not 5-4. And I'd say if it's not 5-4, it's probably not looking so good for us because it means that we may have lost a conservative justice or two to the other side. It's very complicated. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to just wade through the opinion. But I would be surprised, Perry, if there's nothing changed about this law.
Okay, so, you guys did a wonderful job presenting the argument, and I realize that you can't read body language. Sometimes that can really lie to you. But you can get a feel by the justices asking questions. And
sure.
It appeared, what I saw, that the types of questions that the justices were asking back to your team was pretty interesting, that, that they had their antennas up.
Sure. We always pay close attention, especially in a case like this, to Justice Kennedy. He leans to the right, but he's not considered part of the conservatives on the court or the liberals on the court. He's right in the middle. And he was the one that asked basically and kind of stated in court during the oral argument, Justice Kennedy said, if we okay this individual mandate, then we are basically changing the entire nature of the relationship between the individual and the government forever. Because if the government can mandate you do something or penalize you for any reason and force you to enter into the stream of commerce, where is the limiting power? Where does this end? And the government kept saying, oh, this wouldn't happen with everything. The you must buy broccoli scenario that people talked about. They say, well, that would never happen. And then Justice Kennedy said back, he said, how do you explain that? He said, tell me how that would be a limiting. What is the, as he kept saying, limiting principle of this individual mandate theory? Wow. And that is a key, Perry, right there. Because though it sounded like Justice Kennedy didn't buy the government's argument, you cannot totally toss aside, and I just want to make people as realistically prepared as possible, that he could try to come up with his own limiting principle if he thought the law should be saved. So he judicially could create a limiting principle for the individual mandate. That's probably a stretch. And as lawyers, we always think of every possible scenario possible. But when you start to see that kind of questioning, and he realized right away, you do this and you've changed the way our government works with the individual person. And I think,
wow.
People do realize that with the mandate. You haven't made a decision. The government is making a decision for you.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're certainly prayerful about this whole process and the decision, and I'm sure it's going to have a huge impact on the outcome of the election. Let me switch over to HHS. As you know, the policies now has really created an uproar in the faith community, and there's been a really significant pushback. Tell us your feelings about that whole mess.
Well, this all comes out of the healthcare law. What was interesting, Perry, is that at the Supreme Court, we were only dealing with the periphery issues, the structure of the law, the framework of the law, the kind of the guts of how the economic portion works, how it financially works, and how it impacts us as individuals and how it would impact state governments, Medicaid, et cetera. It didn't get into the policy. It didn't get into what really Obamacare is, the healthcare law, Affordable Care Act, is 2,700 pages, some odd 2,700 pages. And really all those 2,700 pages do is create more bureaucratic structure and regulatory structure, not the actual regulations themselves. So the HHS mandate came out of a power delegated to the Health and Human Services, Department of Health and Human Services here in Washington, in Obamacare. And then that mandate becomes its own, dozens of pages throughout. And this is a power that is, administrative power Congress never passed the HHS mandate. So this is what another issue with the healthcare law in general is that if it stands at the Supreme Court come June, at the end of this month, the challenges continue because the mandate is just the tip of the iceberg. So the whole law is pushing power out to all these different federal government departments and agencies. And what happened with the mandate, of course, it involved the contraception issue.
Yeah.
The only person in the room, Perry, to write the actual compromise that was given, which said the insurance companies would pay for everything, was the president of Planned Parenthood.
Oh.
So, I mean, that was the only non-administration official. There wasn't a Catholic bishop there. There wasn't anybody from the religious communities in America. It was the president of Planned Parenthood and the White House team who said, okay, let's make the insurance companies be forced to pay this. Then we'll tell people they're not actually paying for it. But the way the healthcare law works, it's not like insurance companies get paid by the government and that's it. We're all paying the insurance companies still. So your premiums will still go up. People will have to pay more. So it's a joke to many of the Catholic organizations. But let me tell you, Perry, how far it's pushed the ball. Mm-hmm. Before this debate, and we're in court in Missouri over it, before this debate, every state that had one of these mandates for contraceptive or abortifacients, and a lot of states did, had a complete exemption clause for anyone.
Wow. Not
just religious employers. So you could be a private holdings company and do financial transactions. And if your CEO or the board there decides this is against their religious conscience, but you get the waiver. You don't have to go to court. You don't have to file a lot of extra paperwork. You just say it. You do it. You inform the state. They don't question your religious beliefs, and you move on. That's been the law of the land, and no one's ever complained about that. No one's ever had a problem with that. Now, when it comes to the mandate, we're only talking about, for instance, the only thing exempt is the church itself, but not the nonprofits that the church runs.
Right.
So whether it's a school, whether it's a soup kitchen, and you can see this is the classic example of the government trying to make people have a choice. Choose to either abide by your religious conscience and shut down, or violate your religious faith to be in line with the government.
Yeah, we were tracking that even as religious broadcasters. Some 501c3 organizations just flat wouldn't qualify.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it would be very difficult for a lot of institutions who would have to make this decision. And it is the tip of the iceberg. I mean, Perry, the idea behind this is that it's cheaper than having a baby.
Yeah.
So they'd rather have that, service available. Well, so is abortion. I mean, if you're just talking about money, abortion is too. And you know from the people pushing this, that is where they're going. And so it's a very slippery slope. If we go down that path and don't raise our voice, or if anybody who's listening now says, oh, this is only about Catholics, think about it this way. The Catholic community was much more likely, at least before the mandate,
right,
to vote for President Obama. He had a lot better chance of winning votes there. Now, he goes after them right before a general election. I mean, right to the core of their beliefs, where you got the bishops across the country.
Yeah.
What about evangelicals? Do you think he cares about so much about that community and our community, if he'll do that to a community that he's gotten a lot of support in?
Well, Jordan, thank you for what you guys are doing. I tell you, I don't know what we'd do if you guys weren't on the cutting edge in fighting this, and you have the team to do this. Let me just encourage our viewers and listeners, go to aclj.org and check in, support them, be a part of what they're doing. Best to you, Jordan, and your father and your whole team there. You guys are doing wonderful. Next time we get you back, I want to get an update on what's happening with the Texas issue of halting funds of abortion there. We even got that going up here in Oregon. Hopefully we'll get it on the ballot coming up in November. We'll see how that turns out. So there's a lot of issues around the country, but God bless you, my friend. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Perry. Thank everybody. Dove. Thank you.
All right, see you later. All right, Jordan Sekulow with us today from ACLJ. Let me encourage you, go to their website, aclj.org, and take a look at all the issues and the cases and be a part of what they're doing.